Hi guys, it's Maurice here, and I'm just absolutely delighted to be with Candice Combdon, um, who is a Canadian tennis player extraordinaire. Also, obviously, a wheelchair in a wheelchair, and plays tennis from a wheelchair, which we're going to find out a little bit more about later as to why she wants to do that, what's easy and what's difficult about that. How are you doing? Well, it's this morning for you now.
It is, yeah, it's early. It's 8 a.m. here, but I'm awake and I've had two coffees, so I'm good to go.
You're good. You're good to go. And where do we find you in the world? I know, obviously, but where do we find you in the world today?
Yeah, so I'm just about an hour outside of just north of Toronto in a little town called Barrie. So I don't know whether anyone's heard of it, but
No, that's all right. And how is COVID treating you at the moment? Are you on lockdown? Are you free, or what? Where are you at in the whole cycle?
well, we're actually a little bit in between. Like things are just starting to open up now. It was obviously very difficult in the beginning. There was a lot of everybody just staying home and everything was shut down. No one was allowed to go anywhere. So that was obviously quite difficult, I'm sure, for myself as well as everybody. But now things are starting to open back up. We've got the tennis courts opening back up, which obviously is super important for me and my mindset because, not being able to play the sport that I love was kind of driving me a little bit nuts there. But it's everything's kind of just starting to open slowly back up now. So we're
Uh,
hoping that we're kind of on the tail end of things, but we'll see, I guess.
and so you're an elite athlete and a sports star. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you've arrived at that particular point, and what you're up to at the moment.
Oh, well, I don't know if I would say elite, but I appreciate that. um, but I guess I started playing tennis more seriously within the past maybe year and a half or so, specifically with Team Ontario. But before that, I had found out about it probably, I would say, 12 years ago
Mm.
for the very first time. Tried it out, fell in love, knew that I wanted to do that in some capacity because I had never known about it. I grew up watching tennis with my mom. She's a huge tennis fan. So we would sit, on the weekends and watch tennis together. And I obviously have such a love and a respect for the sport and the athletes that play it. So when I realized I could play it in a wheelchair, I thought, well, why wouldn't I, right? Like I'm not a very active person otherwise. I didn't grow up playing sports. So when tennis, wheelchair tennis came along, it was obviously, an easy decision for me. It's not the easiest sport to play, as I know you and I were just speaking about off camera there, but it's a very difficult sport. You've got the racket in one hand, and then you got to push the wheelchair somehow to get to the ball and,
Mm.
be able to hit the ball. So, but I've really been training a lot with my coach. So we've been working really hard. So when tournaments do start opening up again, hopefully I'll be ready to play again. So
Yeah, and I know that one of the things that you say is that I don't I don't mind it being hard, right? I just don't want it to be impossible, right? Or and it's looking at that possibility. But tennis and wheelchair to me seems impossible, right? So how do that one-handed movement? How can you play a backhand, whatever else it is? So I tell us a little bit about it, and tell us some of the challenges that you have, or some of the things that you find easy.
yeah, for sure. Actually, that quote that you were referring to, it's actually from a surfer, a parasurfer, Bethany Hamilton. She lost her arm in a shark attack. But it's always been one of those quotes that's resonated with me. I don't need things to be easy. I can handle the difficult. I can handle the hard. I just need it to be possible. And as far as I'm concerned, everything is possible.
Mm.
So definitely picking up a tennis racket without being a natural athlete, without playing a sport before. It's not easy, but you hold the racket in whether you're right-handed or left-handed, and you use that to actually push that side of the wheelchair. So whether it's the right wheel, the left wheel, and you do the same as a stand-up player, as far as forehand or backhand, they're all the same. All the strokes are the same. All the shots you're making are the same. You serve the same as someone who's a stand-up player. There's little differences in, the way that I toss the ball for my serve, for
Mm.
instance. It might be in a little bit of a different spot than a stand-up player, just because I'm not able to move my body in the way that a stand-up player might be able to. because, stand-up players fall into the court. I can't necessarily fall into the court when I'm serving. I'm stationary. I'm buckled into my sport chair, because if I'm not buckled in, I'm going to fall out.
And do you fall often? That's one of the things that kind of...
I don't. I have seen it before. There are some players that just are really dedicated and they really want to get to that ball and they're going to do anything they can to get to it. So I have seen players flip their chairs. The sport chairs themselves that we use for tennis are actually really difficult to flip. So if you're flipping it, it's probably because you're probably a bit taller. Have a bit of a build on you, because the sport chairs actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wheels on them. So you've got 2 in the front, your 2 main ones, and then there's 1 actually in the back, so that prevents you from tipping backwards. So if you do flip them, it's it takes a lot of effort. So, but I've never done it personally.
and you have achieved a lot in a short career. What would you be saying to other people out there looking at this who kind of find life difficult or find challenges, or are looking for it easy, right? What would be your advice to them?
Just keep trying. Don't give up, because the best decision I ever made was to go and try wheelchair tennis for the very first time. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I have anxiety and bouts of depression, and those things I deal with every single day. So going out and trying something new was not easy for me to do, right? But I did it, and now look where it's led me. You have to take those chances. You have to be willing to make a mistake. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, because otherwise you're not going to have those opportunities necessarily. Okay. So definitely don't give up. Like, just because something is hard, it doesn't mean it's not worth it.
I've just been, at the beach with my 11-year-old boy, and being the son of a mindset coach, he's constantly getting, affirmation from me in relation to what he's doing, or comments as to what he should be doing. But he was just saying, he constantly quotes Homer Simpson quotes to me, right? Because he loves Homer Simpson. He says, the first step to failure is trying, right? But I absolutely get that point, and I was making that observation recently, which is, as we grow older, with the greatest respect, any idiot can get old, right? It doesn't take any effort, right? But the greatest the statement which most people that have lived their lives right through, as the kind of the 4 words that they use most often is, at least I tried, or I wish I had tried, right? And that's the regrets, or that's the positive statements that they actually made. And I absolutely agree that point, which is, that people think that success and failure are opposites. They're not. Failure is part of success, and that trying again and being willing to go is so important. So what has been, what would you consider, looking at your life and career so far, what's your biggest success?
I would say probably, well, as far as, my sport is concerned, this past February, I had the opportunity to go play at Indian Wells in California. So that for me was monumental as far as I'm concerned. Was I ready to go and play at Indian Wells at that point? Probably not. But I wanted the experience, and I wanted, the failure almost, so that I could learn from it, and I could say, okay, this is what happened when I lost. This is what went wrong. This is what I did really well. Right. So these are the things when I go home I need to work on. So I think definitely traveling to Indian Wells, I was one of 3 Canadians that were there representing Canada, right? So, I mean, that's a big honor in and of itself. And definitely, being on Team Ontario was huge. Yeah.
and what would you have said you found toughest? What would be the thing that, you would probably have found hardest or most difficult?
Within tennis specifically?
It's your choice. You answer, whichever way it works for you. But looking at your life so far, what would you said was the most difficult thing?
Okay. Yeah, no, I've definitely had, my fair share of challenges growing up. I was born with a physical disability called spina bifida. And then, just over 2 years ago, I had my right leg amputated because of, reoccurring infection. So I think that for sure was a huge learning curve. You know, not only was I already disabled growing up, but then, you know, to have that amputation, to make that choice to have that amputation, was really difficult, because I knew that as much as it would take away the pain, it was going to make my life that much more difficult. So definitely that. But again, you know, as much as it was a difficult thing for me to go through, it ended up being one of the most positive things in my life, because I'm a happier person now. Like it's afforded me so many opportunities, you know, things like doing this podcast with you. I would have never had the courage, or, you know, I wouldn't want to do that. You know, I would have said, oh no, there would be no reason for you to have found me online and said, hey, this girl seems, you know, inspirational. I'm going to talk to her. Right. I wasn't doing anything with my life before that. So now that, you know, I'm not in my pain, I'm not in pain, and I'm not in that same negative mindset that I was, you know, even just 2 years ago. My life has changed so much, and I've joined Team Ontario. So it's never, as much as it was a difficult negative thing that happened, it's given me so much. So it's hard for me to even see it as a difficulty, right?
And that's, you know, that is amazing comments. You know, I'm honored to talk to lots of inspirational people, and I have to say that I haven't come across anybody who says I've lost my leg and I feel better, right? You know, that's kind of, you know, that's kind of warmed the cockles of my heart today, and made my life feel a little bit, you know, easier in comparison to some of the difficulties that I saw beforehand. And looking at that whole experience, and looking at the huge positivity that you've drawn from it, you know, again, you know, for people watching this, you know, what would be the lesson that you would want to kind of give them? You know, we've talked about trying, you know, and when people ask me the question, you know, what would be my regret, is just not believing in myself enough. Just constantly, you know, feeling a sense of insecurity, or not willing to take a risk. You know, but what would be the words of wisdom that you would offer other people?
I mean, you know, I think I would say that you're capable of way more than you think you are, first and foremost. You know, and just because something seems negative at the time, that doesn't mean that there's not a lesson to be learned or something to be gained from that experience. So as much as you think, you know, your life might be terrible and these things are happening to you, it's all about how you reframe those things and take from them the positives instead of focusing on the negatives.
Okay. So what are you up to at the moment? So you're coming out of lockdown, or your life is opening up. So what's next for you?
It's starting to, yeah. So I guess for the past 2 months now, the tennis courts have been open. So I have been, you know, hardcore focused on my fitness and my tennis training with my coach. Yesterday, I was out there for 5 hours on the court doing training. You know, in the hot sun. It was ridiculously hot here yesterday, which I shouldn't complain about, because at least it wasn't raining and I could play tennis. So, I mean, I'll take the heat over the rain any day. But I'm just really been focusing on myself and trying to get my mind right, because, you know, as an athlete knows, your mindset is so important when you're playing your sport, no matter what the sport is. So I've really been, you know, reading a lot of mindset books, a lot of, you know, habit forming books to form some good habits, taking advantage of the fact that, you know, I don't have to go into work right now because of COVID, it hasn't opened back up again. So I'm really using my time to focus on my tennis game, my mental game, and obviously, you know, spending time with friends and family, but just really getting geared and ready for when our tournaments start opening back up. Because I know stand-up tennis, their tournaments have been coming back. You know, the US Open is being played very soon, but the wheelchair tennis community hasn't had their tournaments open back up again. So I'm just making sure I'm prepared for that.
Okay. And, you know, when you look at your sporting career, or, you know, life in general, who would be your heroes? Who would be one person that you would say to yourself, you know, I like them, and why do you look at them as a hero?
Well, as far as sports go, I mean, you know, it basically comes down to, you know, people like in my sport, Novak Djokovic, who is this amazing tennis player. If you've ever seen him play, I think they call him Gumby, because he just, you know, is all over the court flailing around. And I just, as far as I'm concerned for my sport, you know, that's showing me and teaching me to always go for the ball no matter what, you know, like don't give up on it. Always, you know, don't give up, just keep going, keep trying. As far as life goes, I've always said that my hero in life is Dr. Jane Goodall, who of course is famous for working with the chimps and studying the chimps in the Congo. So I actually had the chance to meet her 2 years ago, right after my amputation. And that was just an amazing experience. She has taught me so much, just as to be a better human being, to, you know, take care of our planet. You know, I'm vegetarian. You know, I'm really, she's taught me a lot just about being a good person. And yeah, I think those would be my two big ones for sure.
Good. So what's the last book you read, or what would be, you would recommend to people the opportunity if they had a chance of reading a book? What would be the one that you would say they should read?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Right now, I'm actually in the middle of reading. I'm almost done it actually, because I haven't been able to put it down. But Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I'd heard. Yeah, I know everybody says that when you listen to these podcasts, it's always on people's lists, but it's because it's just so well written and it's so easy to follow. And, you know, I've already started cultivating good habits just from reading that book. And like I said, it's so good. I read it every morning. It's part of one of my good habits now, is I read my personal development book for 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. So that one for sure. And as far as, you know, just light, fun, you know, reading just because, I'm really into Margaret Atwood right now. You know, obviously another famous author who's Canadian. So of course I would want to support her, but I'm working my way through all of her novels, which is a task in and of itself, because I think she's, you know, written 19 novels or something like that.
and you know, and like all inspirational people that I get the opportunity or honor to meet, it's they always are inquisitive, always are, and they always wanted to learn. You know, and I say this to people all the time, is, you know, that, you know, good leaders or great sports people or whatever else, they're inquisitive, they have a thirst for knowledge. And, you know, we all have a responsibility to continue our education as we go through life. And I know you like music, so what's your music?
Oh gosh, my music tastes are eclectic. I thank my parents for that. You know, my mother was a big 80s fan, obviously, when I was growing up, and my dad is from Newfoundland here in Canada, so he listens to country music. So you know, I have both ends of the spectrum there, and then I've got my own interests. So, you know, I'll listen to anything from 80s to classical, you know, like Vivaldi, down to, you know, 90s music, Hanson and Backstreet Boys, like all of those things. And top 40. I'm all over the place when it comes to music, honestly, but I love it. I'm so thankful for it.
Right. And what do you think of tennis at the moment? Where do you think it's actually at? So I know that they're, you know, it's coming back, you know, so from an athlete's point of view, I'm sure it has been difficult through lockdown, right? Because, you know, playing is what you do. And the opportunity of not playing is difficult. So, you know, any comments to people on sports in general or tennis in particular?
It's definitely been tough. You know, I've struggled with it a lot because, you know, as soon as tennis started coming back, and I thought, oh, you know, I'll be able to get out and play tournaments again. I'm really excited. But then the other side of that is it safe? Right. So, you know, there's stories of a tournament, I don't remember, I think it was in Serbia, Djokovic put it on anyways. And there was, you know, 4 or 5 athletes and coaches that were diagnosed with COVID from that tournament. You know, so then I look at stories like that where I'm like, okay, now coming into the US Open, is it necessarily safe? I know that they're doing everything they can, but it's a struggle for me because, you know, as much as I do want to get back out playing, I also don't want to jeopardize my own health or someone else's health, right? So it's definitely been tough, but I'm happy to see it back. I'm happy to see the athletes that are having the opportunity to get out there and play because, you know, we do love it so much and we are so dedicated. So it is nice to see that, but I do struggle a little bit with, is it the right time? Yeah. Because, you know, they're talking about us getting a second wave at this point, and so I don't know. It's a tough thing for sure.
It is, and you know, as somebody who works with, you know, quite a lot of athletes, you know, and for example, one of the honors I had is I've worked with some of the Australian players, and they've just arrived in the UK, and they're just going into a bubble, and in order to work with them, you have to go into a bubble and stay in the bubble right through the whole process, and that becomes really difficult because, you know, I might have a day's work, but I've got to give up 14 days or 28 days in order to do it. and it does take the time, and it does stress you out. I've seen this morning, for example, Usain Bolt, had a birthday party, and one of the English footballers was there, and he's gone down with COVID, and now the impact that flows right through from all of that has an impact on the English team. So I can absolutely relate to that. I thank you for your time this morning, Candice. I had the opportunity of the exchanges that on Twitter. I read your story. Listening to you, you're an athlete. You are elite. You have achieved remarkable things. You have such a good mindset and such a positive mindset. You're now one of my heroes, and I'll carry that kind of forward with me. So I thank you for your time. Any final comments that you would like to offer before we finish up?
No, I just want to say thank you very much, because as I said, if you had not reached out to me, then this opportunity would have not happened, and I would have not been able to chat with you like this today. So I really do appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you wanting to get my story out there. As I'm learning as I get older, it's quite the story. I never really thought that it was. So now that I'm having the opportunity to tell it.
It's quite the story. And, as I said, on, going through the interview, that positive attitude, that positive mindset. Thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.